Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, October 30th, 2025, the day before Halloween. And this is Michael VanDervort back with another episode of Drive Through HR. We haven't done a show in a while, so it's nice to get back in the saddle here at Drive Through HR, where we love to have informative conversations for HR people and HR practitioners to listen to and learn from others. Our guest today is Jessie Roberts, who is with Nextdoor. Welcome to Drive Through HR, Jessie.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I am super excited to be here. Honored to join you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So tell us, our listeners, about Jessie Roberts and what you do at Nextdoor.
Yeah, I lead our people, partner, and talent management organization here at Nextdoor. In simple terms, I get to work with the intersection of people, culture, and performance, really helping our teams do their best work while staying deeply connected to the neighborhoods that we serve. So, nod back to Nextdoor, of course. I've spent over 15 years in the people space across different industries, the last 10 being in tech. But really what drew me to Nextdoor was the mission. I'm a very mission-driven person. If you look at my history, we often say if it's happening in your neighborhood, it's happening on Nextdoor, and that's real. It's where people connect, share, look out for each other. And I would say, it's a big part of, building the company as well. That brings that sense of connection and belonging inside our walls too. And that was what was really important to me kind of taking on this job.
Yeah. So Robin is like more heavily involved in HR tech side than I am. I'm more of a labor relations and employee relations practitioner, but she just went to HR tech. So does Nextdoor, do you guys define yourselves as a technology company?
We do. We certainly do.
I wasn't sure how that would work. I didn't know if it would be more social or more tech or.
A lot of times we get categorized as the social network of your neighborhood. I think we're really trying to steer away from that. It's not yes, we do. That's how we connect with people across the neighborhood, but we're more than that. We are a utility platform. We want daily use, daily value out of what we're providing to the neighborhoods that we serve.
Yeah. So I'm gonna jump a question and come back to it in a minute. So Nextdoor, it seems like it builds community externally. How does that shape your internal community, and what does belonging look like inside your organization?
Yeah, great question. I think for us on the people team, building community inside the company really means creating moments of connection and belonging in the flow of everyday work. Our team on the people side, we're deeply rooted in rituals, so those small, meaningful habits that keep us connected. During COVID, when everyone suddenly went remote, we asked ourselves, how can we still feel like a team when we're no longer sharing that physical space? One of my favorite examples from that time was, I kind of looked at how can we bring this group still to feel connected. So, we repurposed a productivity tool that lives in Slack. It's called Stand Up and Prosper, and it's meant to be like a daily check-in, like stand-up tool. And we turned it into a people team ritual where we ask a random, sometimes totally unhinged question on a daily basis, and everyone answers, and then it like spits it out into our Slack, and we just laugh and we get to know each other in a completely different way, and it turned into something that like we looked forward to every single day. And people that join the team at different times, they can still quickly feel like they are now part of this team, even if they're hired remote. And that was a really important part. That's still an important part of our culture. Even 5 years later, we still do that tiny ritual. There's other things. We do a Friday video from the leadership team that's paired with, a gift that sums up your week. So kind of like a meme almost. These sound really small things, but they're actually really powerful when you start building on top of each other. Like all of those rituals, that's the heart of our team. And that's really how I think we've been able to create a place where people really do feel like they belong in such a quick way. It's not a program necessarily. So sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. Yeah. No, I was going to say, I was going to ask where Nextdoor is like. I didn't know if you were a hybrid, remote, not you personally, but like the company for the most, like where are you guys geographically located and how are you set up?
Yeah, our HQ is based in San Francisco, California. We've got distributed teams. We've got an office in the UK. We've got an office in New York, Chicago. So we've got some smaller little satellite offices, but our HQ is in San Francisco. But we are really operating in a hybrid world, especially since the COVID and since the pandemic. We've been able to hire across.
Yeah, it's interesting going back to what you were talking about with the rituals and sort of the little small touches. I work in a small 15-person consulting firm in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So we're all under roof, although we usually work hybrid one day or something, and a lot of people travel all the time. But we have things like similar, different approaches, but similar sort of stacking of different things. Like we open every one of our meetings with a question. Sometimes it's a personal, kind of like share something personal. Sometimes it's what's your best business accomplishment this week. Sometimes it's a joke. Like this morning we had a meeting and it was what was the best gift you ever received? And I was stumped. I was like, nobody ever gives me. No, I'm kidding. And those things, and we have a monthly lunch and learn. They're not sophisticated, but we bring in an outside speaker or one of us presents about something that we're passionate about. The company buys lunch, and those, to your point, those things really build up internal. And I know it's got to be way more than pizza, right? As the kind of the meme of pizza at work, but those things still matter a lot. So I find it interesting that's some of the stuff you called out. So at Nextdoor, you guys have a product that basically is allows people to chat in community and share information and post you had a thing that intrigued me about talking about a product mindset. So how does that shift the way you design HR programs or how you measure success? And what's the difference for you? I'm just adding on a little spin here. Now that you're in the tech side, I guess you had experience outside of tech. So what factors influence that in the work you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, leading HR with a product mindset really means, treating our people programs the same way our product teams treat the Nextdoor experience, something that you could deliver daily value and daily utility to the people that use it. Instead of rolling out, and this is kind of where I go back to some of my early days in HR, like instead of rolling out a program yearly, hoping that it lands and sticks, we actually design, test, iterate. We do retros after every cycle of any one of our programs to continue to learn and experiment on top of what we've previously done, just like you would with a feature launch, really. We look at employees as the users of our systems and ask, is this intuitive? Is this adding value? Are people engaging with it in the flow of their work? We want to build these programs alongside the business. I don't want it to be ever heavy-handed and this is the program and you roll it out and you haven't talked to a single stakeholder as you're doing it. And so, I think a really great example of this that we recently rolled out was it came to life with our peer feedback program. We started with a vision of creating a manager scorecard, a single holistic view of how someone performs in their role as a manager at Nextdoor. That meant really pulling together inputs from their manager review, the upward feedback, and then the peer feedback, 3 different lenses from different directions to help tell a better, more complete story of how that person is performing as a manager or as a leader at Nextdoor. And instead of just rolling out your standard, we've seen it before at other companies where you ask your peer, you select a bunch of peers, they ask, you ask them a bunch of questions and then they do a little write-up on you. We did that. But we also decided, and this is where that product mindset comes in, we A/B tested 2 different versions of this peer feedback. So we did the old school way. And then we also decided, and I wouldn't say this is revolutionary in any way, but we did a 360 where we combined all 3 at once, that manager, peer, and upward feedback, trying to combat that survey fatigue that we feel oftentimes
Hmm.
at companies. And, trying to also be mindful of just all the asks that we're asking the business to do on the HR side. And, what I think we found was, I think what we learned was somewhat fascinating. Regardless of the method, we actually discovered that written peer feedback in a system isn't really the way to go. We had another program at Nextdoor that we had implemented. We called it feedback loops, and it was really like speed dating for feedback in a way. And it's where you get in a room with your peers and you it's a one-on-one conversation, but it's a live conversation, and it's 5 minutes, quick feedback. And that was so much more valuable than anything someone was writing down in a system. I think people get really hesitant when it's living in a system. They don't know how it's going to be used, who's going to read it. Like, there's a lot of like trust that kind of comes along with that. And so, though we did experiment and we did these 2 A/B tests, going back to like building programs with a product mindset, we actually realized like that's not the way we actually want to go going forward, because it didn't really produce what we wanted. And even though that was the outcome, I think to me, the essence of leading HR with a product mindset means, treating these people programs as products. You test, learn, iterate, and we still discovered that we can genuinely drive better business outcomes from that process.
Yep.
Even though it was not the outcome we probably hoped for or wanted, it was still drove to a different outcome that will ultimately be
Well,
better.
and if you found, I mean, in the learning, it seems like the learning takeaway is, we found the most, the most effective and meaningful type of feedback is still face-to-face human contact. You hope people treat that well, right? Manage some managers or some employees always seem to manage to find the way to say the wrong thing or say it the wrong way because we're humans. But to your point, I think it's probably still better. Which kind of brings us to a pivot, given that you work at a tech company and the entire economy is being turned upside down by many factors, but one of which we're going to spend probably the next 18 or so minutes on is AI and the disruptions it's bringing and the whatever all it is doing. We use it around here a lot in our consulting business. We haven't replaced anybody as a result, but we use it as a regular tool in a lot of our work processes and stuff. So I can see where employers are so attracted to it. Is it influencing the way you approach people operations at Nextdoor?
Yeah, I mean, AI is the talk of the town right now. Obviously, every conference you go to. I mean, I went to Transform in Vegas I've been going every year, but went a couple of years ago, and they were just starting to talk about AI. Last year, it was all AI. So
Hmm.
you're starting to, I mean, it's everywhere right now. I would say, for us, AI is reshaping how we think about the people function, not by replacing the human element, but by enhancing it.
Hmm.
I see it more as that cultural capability, not just a tool. So, I think we've spent a lot of time at Nextdoor where it is a focus. We've started to bring it into the foundation of the culture to some degree. And so what that means is, there's a couple of different things I think we've done. We've started to embed AI fluency directly into our leveling guide. So, we've got leveling guides for what's expected of you at different levels. We have an AI fluency piece that we've created and built into that now. It's now part of how we evaluate growth and performance. We expect every employee, no matter their role, to get comfortable using AI and to improve how they work.
Hmm.
I think the other area where I think we're starting to reshape how we're adopting it is cultivating that mindset of learning by doing. So instead of these long trainings, you sit behind a screen and someone's going to teach you all this. Yes, we've done some micro learnings on AI for folks that are less, you know, understanding of how to like get started. Because I think
Hmm.
that's really the hurdle is like, I don't know where to start. We really want to encourage people to experiment, try it, test it, share what you learn. That's how fluency grows, is through that curiosity, not compliance. I've personally spent a lot of time trying and failing with AI tools. I know I was trying to create this kind of like a whole agent for my people managers to use and like so that it could free up more of my time. And it was a complete fail. But I love doing it. And even that time I spent doing that, like I have now learned other things that can help me get to the outcome I wanted, just in a different
Hmm.
way. And I think you just have to keep pressing on that. That's where you find the gold, is by like just continuing to try new things and experiment with it. I also know I'm not the best in the room. Like I have built my fluency over time. Former head of people used to always say, like, treat it like a teammate. Put time on your calendar as if you're having a one-on-one with your AI tool, and like reserve that space to learn. I think with any training, I've led different learning and growth functions in the past, and time is always the issue with people. I can't make time for this training. I don't have enough time. And it's like, just put that block on the calendar. Pretend that your AI tool is your teammate and you have to go have a one-on-one, and that's how you're going to make space for it. And then I think the other thing is really trying to find ways where AI can help scale impact. So I've built agents, again, and it's like little micro things. It's not like some big overarching thing that's going to change like all the parts of how you work more effectively. But as an example, like I built an AI agent that will help managers write their draft the performance reviews. So you build out what you want the output to be. You get really specific on the back end of how you want it framed, using Nextdoor's values, using our leveling guide, all those things. And then it will spit out it gets the review like 80% there for managers if they have enough notes that they're feeding into it as well. And that's a huge time saver for managers that really struggle with, how do I get pen to paper? Where can I get those words? And I think those types of tools, like even though it's a micro thing, will still help them be more efficient and focus on other things that are more important and
Yeah.
impactful.
I love the notion. So, like, I've barely touched agents, and that's one of the things. One of the things I don't do a lot of process stuff. That we don't have a lot of like process driven stuff. I did a presentation at a conference here about a month ago, where three different people, all labor relations practitioners, presented. I talked about how we use it in our consulting business, and to some extent how labor unions are using it. It's very similar to business. They're enhancing processes and that kind of thing. But one guy talked about how his enterprise is buying off the shelf AI products to help manage like their truck drivers. They have an AI monitor in each truck that doesn't, and drivers in trucks have often had cameras on their trucks for a long time. Sometimes they're internally facing, which drivers hate. This is not a camera, it's a sensor, and it monitors drivers' motions, and it can tell if a driver's getting sleepy or if they're holding their cell phone in their hand, and it will set off an alert, right? So it's monitoring and regulating human behavior, which some people hate. But for, from a public safety and a driver responsibility standpoint, it's pretty important, I would think. So, there's like all sorts of opportunities here, I think. The third guy that presented with me is like a one person. He's in a big company, but he's the only guy in his function, and he has all this internal stuff, surveys, and all these things coming in. So he's all into the agents because he's figured out, like you, ways to help, kind of, speed up his ability to handle 15 pulse surveys coming in a week from retail locations all around the world. So there's all sorts of different applications, and I know we're, preaching to the choir here a little bit, but it's really interesting. I'm curious, before we jump into this little hot take round we're going to do to wrap up. I'm curious about like what kind of parameters, if you can speak to this. I don't want to, I don't, it's not super secret, but like what's Nextdoor's like corporate approach to it? You said, it sounds like they're encouraging, but do you use like a certain system, or, is it available widely, or is it only to certain levels? Just kind of curious how it's structured in the corporation.
Yeah, we definitely have like an AI usage policy from a compliance perspective, because we want to make sure that we're also not like feeding the internet all of our deepest, darkest secrets, And so there's certainly, the policy was one of the first things that we rolled out from a compliance perspective. But, and we have enterprise, I think, ChatGPT for the company that we encourage folks to use, but they should log in via our access sites so that it's not off in your own world. Because again, we want
Right.
to be mindful of like, what are we sharing in the ether? And it's not all of our earnings data type of thing. We also use Glean, which is another great product where it's embedded in our system. So it's pulling from our G Suite and our Slacks and other areas where you can then, it starts to get to know you more, and it has access to all your docs. So it's a much more easy way to kind of work through different projects or things that you need to use AI for. It's also, you could type in there and say, like, give me the themes of our last, 5 years of board meetings. What have we learned from that? And like, it has all the board material in our system. Just, it depends on who has access to all the things. But, it's such an amazing tool to be able to like, get all those insights or learn or the analytics of it is phenomenal, and like
Yeah.
changes the way we work, I think. So
One of the things I found useful is like recording calls, and it automatically generates notes. Some people are freaked out about the idea that you're recording a call and that there's a complete transcript, but it's so useful because it captures all the stuff that you think you get in your notes, and when you look at it and compare them side by side, AI is 100% better than human notes, especially when you're trying to talk and sketch quick notes fast. But getting used to that kind of oversight or whatever is going to take a little while, I think. Well, let's do this hot take round. I had several different kind of like statements, and just would like to get your impression on them, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So the first one is, the statement would be, AI will make HR more strategic. Do you think AI actually frees up HR to focus on strategy, or does it just give us more administrative stuff to do with better marketing behind it?
I mean, I think it can make HR more strategic, honestly. I think if we use it the right way, it gives us access to analytics and insights in real time. It's like having that new teammate who helps you with that leads with data. I think our team here, we've been really strapped from a HR analytics perspective, and now I've got an HR analytics person that sits with me. So it does free me up. I can now lead with that data from that standpoint, where I'm not spending all the time. I mean, you mentioned your friend who does pulse surveys, like, and he's just getting fed all these I remember a day when, it would take us weeks to decipher all of the data from our
Right.
big company-wide engagement survey. And now it's like, that takes me a day, with AI and like trying to frame the story up. Like, it's huge from that perspective. So I do think it can make HR more strategic, because it's allowing them to lead with more data and frees them up to actually, be able
Yeah,
to do
because
it.
just like that example of like assessing sentiment from open-ended comments or on surveys or whatever, that could take days or weeks depending on the volume, or in my buddy's, like it's something every like hours every week. Now he gets that in minutes, and of
Mhm.
course there's always the concern about, did it get it right, how accuracy and all that sort of thing. But generally speaking, they do a pretty good job. So I tend to agree with you. So second hot take: AI hiring tools are biased, but humans are worse. Is that true in your experience? Or how do you make sure that AI doesn't amplify bias?
I think bias exists everywhere, in humans and in AI, if I'm being really honest. I think it's only as good as you feed it, and we are biased as humans and we're feeding it. So we are innately like going to be biased when we're feeding it information.
Right. When it's trained on human stuff, it picks up the human biases for sure.
Right. And these tools start to learn you. And so it's learning how I ask questions, what I'm looking for. When I prepped for this, even, it knows me. It knows who I am already, just because I've been working with it for so long. And so even in that way, it's going to respond probably, because I also, when you start asking it clarifying things, or you want more, dive here, or change it this way, like, I'm biased in how I'm probably asking that, or
Hmm.
what I'm asking. And so I do think it can be biased. I think what's important is when I am looking for, I use it sometimes as a thought partner, but when I am using it in that way, I also want the contradictory view. Like, is there another way in which I should be thinking about this? Like, what's the
Right.
alternative side of this coin? And that's, I think, making sure that you're using it with a curiosity in that sense. And you're not just, great, you got my answer for me, I'm going to go with it. It's keep asking it. Have that conversation with it so that it can suss out different opinions and perspectives. And that's where I think you'll get less bias, but I do think AI is definitely can be biased.
Yeah, a couple of, I don't know if pro tips is the fair way to say it, because I've been using it for about 2.5 years, and it's all taught from the seat of my pants, which is how you really have to learn it. One thing that you can do is you can ask it to assume a specific role. You can say, like, I would like you to be my product marketing manager, or assume the role of a marketing PR analyst or something, and help me think through this problem, right? So you kind of give it a framework to operate from, which has its ups and downs, but it's an interesting approach. And the other thing is, as you said, ask it iterative questions, and then say, what did I miss? What else
Mhm.
should I, those prompting it to force it to think differently because it will try, like, to your point, it will try to follow along with what it thinks you need. It's trying to please you, which is weird, but so you have to be careful of that trap. So I use those techniques, sometimes at the beginning and sometimes at the end, sometimes both, to kind of keep it on task for whatever I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. I think
Cool.
definitely asking it those questions of like, pretend I'm so and so is really helpful as well.
Yeah. Performance reviews. Performance reviews are dead, and AI coaching is the future. And you talked a little bit about you're using some of this stuff to help people help your managers write performance appraisals. So do you think AI-driven feedback loops really replace traditional reviews, or is it just a speed kind of enhancing the getting the project done?
Yeah, I think real feedback from real humans is still critical for growth. I don't think that, performance reviews are dead. I do see a ton of new tools that is AI coaching focused, and I think those are great. I think it can observe how you're responding in Slack channels or how you're writing emails and how you're interacting with people in your one-on-ones that you record. Like, I do think that tool is very helpful in like some of that real-time coaching. But I don't think it's going to replace like the real human connection and coaching that does require nuance, context, empathy. All of those things I think are still real and important. AI, it's great at, talking points and summarizing data. I do think it helps framing up, especially with difficult conversation. I need to have this difficult conversation with X person. Here are the issues. How can I frame it in an empathetic way? Or I need to be a little bit more harsh in my tone. Help me with that. Like, I think that's an amazing tool that can help, but I don't think it replaces the actual real life conversation that you're going to
Yeah.
have to have.
I have actually set up simulated coaching, hard, difficult conversations, right? I want you to be the employee. I'm your manager. Help me practice this discussion about, I don't know, smelly body odor or, whatever it might be, right? And it actually, and you can do it in voice mode. So it becomes, there's a little, I mean, you're still talking to an AI tool, but it becomes almost gives you, like reps in a sandbox or reps on a practice court where you can try different things and different tones, and it will actually give you feedback on what you said and how you might say it differently or more empathetically, which is also weird since machines apparently don't have empathy. That's really cool. A couple more and then we'll wrap up. In 5 years, HR will need more data scientists than HR generalists. Do you buy that? And what skills should HR pros be learning now?
It's necessarily true. I do think leading with data is absolutely critical for HR leaders. But that doesn't mean we need to all become data scientists necessarily. I mentioned this earlier, like we've been squeezed by not having that data scientist on our team or that analytics person on our team. I think with AI, that pressure is really easing. We suddenly have tools that can do some of that work for us. Help summarize the trends, visualize the data, to take it to that specialized team. I think we still need people to read between the lines. We still need storytellers of our data. I think that's where that human piece is going to come across. But do we all need to be data scientists? Not necessarily. I think we all need to get more comfortable using data for sure. I think that's known for a long time, but I think it's been harder when you're the one having to figure that out. But now we've got tools to help us with that and makes it so much faster.
Excuse me. I think you've kind of leaned into it, just touched on it a couple times, which is this idea that AI can augment you as a professional, can augment you. I mean, it can do a lot of things, but if you use it kind of like I think you said as your thought partner from time to time, it that to me that's the sweet spot. It can help you drill down and get more focused more quickly than if you had, now people say there's a corresponding kind of the more you do that, the dumber you get because you forget how to do it yourself. I don't personally buy that just yet, although, well, I guess everything remains to be seen. Thanks for doing this. It was a pleasure to chat with you. Loved having you as a guest on Drive Through HR. Secondly, tell people where they can find you or get in contact with you, whatever you're comfortable sharing. And then lastly, any final thoughts about what's one thing you hope HR doesn't lose as technology keeps advancing?
Yeah, I would say I think the one thing we can't lose is our humanity. The empathy, intuition, connection that makes the work meaningful. I mean, again, that's what I said at the start of this podcast, like, I've been in this field for over 15 years. It's always been about the relationships and the problem solving for me, helping people grow, navigate those challenges, feel like they belong. I think, yes, technology is evolving, and the faster we can keep up is great. But I think the real magic of HR is still the moments that can't be automated. I love my job because I love the people I get to work with, not the AI tool that I have. So I think that's one thing I would say not to lose. Lastly, I would just, again, I'm so grateful to you, Michael, for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I would say the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can just search Jessie Roberts Nextdoor. I love connecting with other HR like-minded folks. Yep.
Well, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for listening to Drive Through HR. We'll talk again sometime soon. Take care.